Okay, today we're tackling something pretty fascinating. We're asking this question: can an ancient scripture actually map onto modern world history? We're going to dive deep into a specific interpretation from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that connects a prophecy in the Book of Mormon, Jacob chapter 5 to be exact, with some of the biggest global events of the 20th century. All right, let's get into it. So, that's the big question right there. Can a prophecy, written down in an ancient book, really line up with the kind of messy, complex political shifts that have shaped our world? Now, just to be clear, in this explainer, we're looking at one particular theological viewpoint. Our job isn't to prove it right or wrong, but to really understand how this interpretation connects the dots between a super rich allegory and actual historical reality. Okay, first things first. Before we can even touch the history part, we have to learn to speak the language of the prophecy itself. It's basically one long story, an allegory, about a vineyard. So let's break down the key symbols that are the foundation for everything else. Now, what's really cool here is how simple the core ideas are. You've got the vineyard, which is just the world. The main focus is a tame olive tree, and that represents the house of Israel, God's covenant people. The owner of it all, the Lord of the vineyard, well, that's God. And the branches, those are different groups of people. You're going to want to keep these in your back pocket because they're the key to unlocking this whole thing. So here's the setup, the drama of the story. The Lord of the vineyard comes to check on his prized olive tree, and it's a mess. It's producing all this bad, worthless fruit. But then he sees something really important, the roots, which symbolize those original ancient covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They're still good. They're healthy. So instead of just tearing the tree down, he decides he's going to launch one last, massive, all-out effort to save it. And that sets the stage for everything that follows.
All right, let's jump to our first big historical connection. This is where we start to see how this interpretation gets built. We're looking at how some major political events in the early 1900s are seen as the very first step in the Lord of the Vineyard's grand plan to fix his tree.
The scripture says, "They also took of the natural branches which had become wild and grafted them into their mother tree." So what does that mean? Well, in this view, those natural branches that grew wild are the Jewish people who've been scattered all over the world for centuries. And grafting them into their mother tree? Well, that's interpreted as a prophesied return to their ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. And that brings us right here to this one specific pivotal year, 1917. According to this interpretation, this is the moment the political soil, you could say, was finally turned over, making that prophesied grafting actually possible after centuries of the land being ruled by others. So what on earth happened in 1917? I mean, it was a massive power shift. The Ottoman Empire, which had been in control of the Holy Land for 400 years, gets defeated in World War I. Suddenly, the British Empire is in charge of Palestine. And then, that same year, Britain issues the famous Balfour Declaration. This was a huge public statement saying they supported a national home for the Jewish people. Just like that, after centuries, the door was politically open for a return. But to really feel the weight of that shift, you have to ask yourself, what was the land actually like before 1917? The change is just so much more incredible when you see what it was like before. And get this quote just paints the most vivid picture. About 50 years before the British took over, the American author Mark Twain went to visit, and he was absolutely shocked by what he found. He called it desolate, silent, almost completely empty. This was not the vibrant land of milk and honey from the scriptures. It was, as he put it, a mournful expanse. So you can start to see a pattern taking shape here on this timeline, right? Way back in 1841, an early leader in the Latter-day Saint faith, Orson Hyde, actually traveled to Jerusalem specifically to dedicate that land for the gathering of the Jewish people. Then you've got 1867, where Mark Twain gives us this stark, outside perspective of its desolation. And boom, 1917. The political situation flips, and suddenly the possibility of a return becomes a reality. Okay, so the land is prepared. What comes next? Well, that preparation leads us right into our next section, the physical rebirth of a nation. This is seen as the most direct fulfillment of that grafting prophecy we were just talking about. The scripture here talks about nourishing the vineyard so that the good may overcome the evil. And the interpretation is that this isn't just some abstract idea. It's about the active, hands-on process of bringing a scattered people back together to restore the health and the life of that original mother tree. And that brings us to what many see as the historical climax of this whole interpretation, 1948. This is a year that didn't just change the map of the Middle East, but for believers, it was the fulfillment of a core piece of this ancient prophecy. So here's what happened. After the absolute devastation of World War II, international support for creating a Jewish homeland really took hold. The UN approved a plan, and in May of 1948, the State of Israel was officially declared. For people who see this through the lens of Jacob 5, this wasn't just a political event. No way. This was the literal grafting of those scattered branches of Israel right back into their ancestral tree. But wait, there's another really important piece to this puzzle. Preparing the land and physically bringing the people back, that scene is only half of the story. There's a parallel spiritual gathering that's considered just as important. And according to this viewpoint, it had to get started way, way earlier. So this last verse we're looking at talks about the Lord's desire to have joy again in the fruit of my vineyard. And to make that happen, he calls for servants to come and work with him one last time. So that begs the question, who are these final laborers? And when do they get the call to start working? And to answer that, we have to jump in the time machine and rewind the clock even before that dedication of the land in 1841, all the way back to 1830. This year is seen as the official start of the spiritual side of this final push. See, in 1830, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was officially organized by Joseph Smith, and the Book of Mormon was published. Within this framework, that event is seen as the official call to action for that last group of servants, prophets, missionaries, everyday members, to kick off a global spiritual gathering, running at the same time as the physical one we just talked about. So now let's put it all together. We've got these two timelines kind of running in parallel. One is physical and one is spiritual. And according to this interpretation, they combine to form one complete prophetic pattern for our time. This table just lays it all out so clearly. You've got the verse about preserving the roots, and that's tied to the political events of 1917 that got the land ready. You've got the grafting of the branches linked directly to the creation of Israel in 1948, the physical restoration. And then you have the call for the final laborers, which is connected back to the religious events of 1830 that started the spiritual gathering. It really does present this one cohesive and pretty remarkable story. And that's really where this leaves us. We've walked through one very specific way of reading an ancient text and seeing it line up with modern history. And it leaves you with this one final, really provocative thought. If it's even possible for history to follow a script, what could that possibly mean for what's still to come? Definitely something to think about.